Добрий день, я вітаю.
Good afternoon. I want to thank everybody who joins us today. Ukraine Media Center Ukrinform continues its operation. It's day 278 of our fight for freedom, and now we will be talking about the situation in Dnipropetrovsk region. Joining us online is Mykola Lukashuk, head of Dnipropetrovsk Regional Council, deputy chair of the Dnipropetrovsk Regional Defense Council. Mr. Mykola, good afternoon. Good afternoon. Mr. Mykola, let's start with the last day. How did it pass in Dnipropetrovsk region? What is the aftermath of the strikes inflicted by the Russians on Saturday and Sunday? Let's start with the most difficult subject. On Saturday, two communities in the Dnipropetrovsk region were attacked. In my opinion, the target was exclusively the terror. There are no military installation in that region. We had one casualty and 13 injured. A body of a person was found under the debris of an enterprise which manufactured crops, the agricultural enterprise. Regarding other sectors, an object of transport infrastructure was damaged, but due to security reasons, we cannot disclose any details of that strike. However, I can say that the damage is significant on the facility. As to the region in general, the situation did not change substantially. In Energodar, for example, more than 300 shells, including heavy artillery and rocket artillery, they were used in the strikes over Nikopol community. For what we understand, Nikopol region finds itself without power supply and water supply. The infrastructure is heavily damaged. Yes, DTEC keeps on working and repairing the networks, the power supply grid. However, the bombardment is still in progress, and for more than 3 hours yesterday there was a threat of bombardment. We were observing the movement of enemy material on their side of the front line, and there was air raid alert and shelling alert sounding for a very long time, and people were staying in shelters all that time. As to the bombardment of Kryvyi Rih, we know that the railway communication was suspended. Was it resumed for the time being? Well, I don't want to comment any details, but as I mentioned, the damage is quite substantial, and we understand that enemy tries to break our logistics, the supply chains, and movement over the railway in general. So the repair works are still in progress because of the significant damage, as I mentioned. As to the function of the critical infrastructure in other parts of Dnipropetrovsk region, what's the situation over there? Within the last weeks, we had a meeting with the local governments, with the mayors and the deputies of the regional councils and all the utility services involved in power, water, and heating supply. We developed the mechanisms to be implemented during blackout in case of any damage of a significant infrastructure. So we have those plans in place. We had 1 week without lights. In some communities, the power supply was absent within 60 hours. Well, the power lines were built long time ago, and when Ukrenergo provides the rolling power shutdown schedule, for example, which is functioning today, as they reported, there is a 27% deficit, almost 30% deficit over the whole of Ukrainian grid. So we have a number of communities without power even today. So having that meeting I mentioned with all the utility services and mayors, we have developed the plan of actions of what to do, who has to do, and when. So even provided any new massive strike and absence of communication. All the communities know how we will coordinate our action, how we will communicate, and to have all the communities, even during the blackout, to have everybody in touch. Talking about the hospitals, I'm talking about the regional hospitals, the big hospitals in big cities. We have 86 communities and 27 are the cities. They are all equipped with generators, so all the people who are there or who undergo surgery or in intensive care units, so they don't stop operating. Everything was provided by State Emergency Service. There is a plan in place for water supply. How the water supply will be reestablished, reconnected, where we will take water, or how we will have water delivered or pumped using the generators. Talking about the heat supply, we understand that the small boilers will work all across the small towns and small communities. But talking about some big-scale boiler rooms, in case of blackout, they are powered by the grid, and there will be no heat supply, unfortunately. For the time being, there is water supply, there is heat supply. As to the power supply, there are multiple communities where the power supply is absent for 8 or 12 hours, but the situation within the last 2 or 3 days is more, I would say, understandable, and it's not the case that any community spends like 3 days without power at all. Some of them get reconnected. About their resilience stations, they started operating all across the country. How is the situation with them in Dnipropetrovsk region? Are they launched already? Are they deployed? If there are any complications, what are they? Well, the situation is being monitored on a daily basis. The people's deputies, regional deputies, mayors, local governments, and the state emergency services analyzes the situation, and if any issues arise, if anything is absent at a resilience point, we take all the necessary steps to mitigate all the deficiencies. We understand the problems. We had a meeting of Regional Defense Council at 12 o'clock. We've heard the reports of regional head of emergency service, and I can tell you that the situation with the resilience stations in the Dnipropetrovsk region is pretty good. We keep working. Obviously, we have some maybe weak links in some stations. For example, internet is absent, but if we're talking about recharging of a telephone, heating, having a small snack, drinking a cup of tea, everything is alright in that regard. Internet is not connected to all the resilience stations. However, this issue will be solved pretty shortly, I guess, using Starlink. Mr. Mykola, maybe a difficult question about the operation of businesses under conditions like that. We understand that business is directly connected with the replenishment of local budgets. What's the situation with them? I'll tell you what. On Thursday, I found a place to drink a cup of tea because there was no power supply. But I've seen a businessman who was driving his own car. He started a generator and he was selling that tea. But talking about big businesses, if there is a line, a manufacturing line, working under conditions of emergency power shutdowns, and we understand that this emergency power shutdowns happens due to the order of Ukrinform, so this influences to a large extent on operation of any business. Rocket strike threat adds to it because people have to stay in the shelters, but talking about medium-sized business, if there is a rolling power shutdown schedule, we understand the people cannot pay using their card, they cannot service their customers. We understand that the gas stations keep operating using the generators. However, in my opinion, it influences the strikes, the rocket strikes influence the economy, impact the economy, so there is less taxes and less funds are channeled to defense of our country. So the enemy intentionally does everything aimed to create a humanitarian catastrophe and to create the pressure on the economy. I will tell you that there is a large number of applications. Many businesses wants to get added to committees involved working with the regional administrations to get connected to the grid, but the main priority is the people, the communities, the medical infrastructure and critical infrastructure. We have questions in our studio, please. Good afternoon, Olga Apanasenko, Ukrinform. Can you please comment on the dynamics of evacuation of the deoccupied territories in Kherson region? Does the number of people coming to Dnipropetrovsk region increase? I mean, coming from Kherson region, and what are the numbers we are talking about here? Ms. Olga, thank you for your question. I want to say that within the last week, the number of people coming to our region grew 5,000 to 6,000. I mean, people coming from Zaporizhia region and Kharkiv region and Kherson region as well. So those were the people who were registered with the social services, and we keep receiving the information on a daily basis. This is how we build our communications on the level of local governments. Every community reports on the internally relocated persons, the number of children, men, women, people over 60 years. We process all that information together with the military administration, and we see that about 6,000 people got registered in our region. So this is specifically the part from Kherson region in Kryvyi Rih. Why Kryvyi Rih? Because it's a powerful industrial center, just as Kamensk, as Pavlograd, but it's closer to Kherson region. And it's quite understandable when people choose between, say, Odessa, Mykolaiv, or Kryvyi Rih, they choose Kryvyi Rih. We understand that it's approximately 3 times more people who left, but they were still not registered with the government services. So probably we're talking about 15 to 20,000 people who starting from Thursday started entering Kryvyi Rih and the Kryvyi Rih region. That's the approximate estimate. Any more questions, friends? Mr. Mykola, thank you for joining us online. Dear colleagues, I will remind you, we had Mykola Lukashuk with us, the head of Dnipropetrovsk Regional Council. At 14:30 we will have Yaroslav Yanushevich, head of Kherson Oblast Military Administration, join us online. So bear with us. Glory to Ukraine.